Welcome to Revenge Harvest. Before I tell you what I said to my brother that made the entire restaurant go silent, and what I did in the weeks after that changed everything, tell me something first. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I want to know who's here with me tonight. Because this story starts at a dinner table, and it ends with my brother losing the one thing he said he needed me for. My name is Rachel. I'm 31 years old. I work in software engineering at a mid-sized tech firm in Austin, Texas. I have a studio apartment I pay for myself, a car I bought myself, and a savings account I built from 7 years of overtime, skipped vacations, and saying no to things I actually wanted so I could say yes to stability. I am the oldest. My brother Derek is 28. He has never held a job longer than 14 months. He is charming, loud, and the kind of person who makes everyone in the room feel like they're his best friend until he needs something. Then you find out exactly what you were to him the whole time. My parents have known this about Derek for as long as I have. They've watched him bounce from one idea to the next. A clothing line, a dropshipping business, a podcast that published 4 episodes before disappearing. Every time, they told me privately that they were worried. Every time, when Derek walked back through the door with a new pitch, they handed him whatever he asked for. And every time, they looked at me and said nothing. I told myself that was fine. I told myself I didn't need their validation. I had built my life without waiting for their applause, and I was proud of that. What I didn't understand, what I spent a long time not letting myself see clearly, was that their silence toward me wasn't neutrality. It was expectation. They weren't ignoring me. They were saving me, storing me. Like money in an account they planned to withdraw from when the time was right. The time, apparently, was my father's 65th birthday dinner. Derek had been talking about opening a restaurant for almost 2 years. A Texas smokehouse concept, he called it. He had a name for it, Ember and Oak, and a logo he'd paid someone on Fiverr to design, and a 3-page document he referred to as a business plan that was mostly font choices and a mood board. He had found a space in East Austin, a 1,200-square-foot former sandwich shop with good foot traffic, and a landlord willing to sign a 12-month lease. What he did not have was $45,000. That number came up for the first time about 6 weeks before the birthday dinner. Derek had mentioned it to me in passing, or what felt like passing, the way he mentioned things when he was testing the water before diving in. We were on the phone and he said, "The build-out alone is going to run about 45. But I've got a guy who can do it for 30 if I pay half up front." I said that sounded like a lot. He said it was an investment. I said I hoped it worked out for him. There was a pause, and then he laughed and said, "Yeah, me too." I thought that was the end of it. My mother called me 3 days later. She asked how work was going. She asked if I was seeing anyone. She asked whether I had thought about Derek's restaurant. I told her I hadn't, really. She said, "He just needs a partner. Someone who believes in him." I told her I believed he could do it. She said, "I mean financially." I told her I didn't have that kind of money sitting around. She said, "Rachel, you make good money." And then she moved on to something else. Like the conversation had never happened. My father called 2 days after that. He asked if Derek had talked to me. I said we'd spoken. He said Derek had a real shot at something here, that the space was perfect, that the timing was right, that family supported family. I listened. I said I understood. I told him I loved him, and I'd see him at his birthday dinner. He said, "Good girl. I want you to notice something." Neither of them asked me directly. Not yet. They were warming the water. That's the thing about families like mine. They don't make demands right away. They create an atmosphere. They make you feel like the reasonable thing, the loving thing, the obvious thing, is to give them what they want, and by the time they say it out loud, they've already decided you've agreed. The birthday dinner was at my parents' house. It was a Saturday in March, and my mother had cooked for 2 days straight. There were 14 people there: my parents, Derek, Derek's girlfriend Simone, 3 of my aunts and their husbands, my cousin Bethany and her fiancé, and me. I brought wine and a card with a check for $200 inside for my father. The first 2 hours were normal. We ate. My father opened gifts. Derek made everyone laugh with a story about a disastrous camping trip. My mother kept refilling glasses. I sat next to Bethany and talked about her upcoming wedding and felt, for a brief window, like a person at a family dinner who was simply enjoying a family dinner. Then my mother stood up. She didn't clink her glass. She didn't say "excuse me" or "I have an announcement." She just stood up, and the table went quiet the way tables do, when the person who controls the room decides to speak. She said she wanted to take a moment to talk about Derek's restaurant. She said she and my father had been so moved by his vision, by his courage, by his willingness to take a risk on something he believed in. She said the family needed to come together to support him. She said Derek had found the perfect space, had a solid plan, and just needed some help getting across the finish line. Then she looked at me. Not at the table, at me. She said, "Rachel has always been the responsible one, the one we knew we could count on, and we're so proud of her, which is why we know she's going to do the right thing here." My father reached into the chair beside him, and I want you to understand, I did not see this coming. Not like this, not in front of everyone, and he placed a single sheet of paper on the table and slid it toward me. It was a loan agreement, Derek's name on one side, mine on the other. $45,000, 12 months, 0 interest. My father said, "We had it drawn up so everything is official. We know you like things in writing." Derek smiled at me from across the table. Not a nervous smile, a settled one, like this was already done. I looked at the paper. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father. I looked at the 14 people sitting at that table who were all, every one of them, looking at me. My Aunt Sandra said, "It's such a wonderful thing to do for your brother." My cousin Bethany said nothing, but she reached over and patted my hand. I picked up the paper. I read it slowly. I set it back down. I said, "I'm not going to sign this." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. My mother said, "Rachel." I said, "I love Derek. I want his restaurant to succeed. But I'm not in a position to loan $45,000 to anyone, and I'm not going to sign a legal document at a birthday dinner in front of an audience." My father said, "This isn't an audience. This is your family." Derek said, "Rach, come on. I'll pay you back. You know I will." And here is where I need to pause, because I want you to really hear what happened next. Not the words, what was behind them. My mother looked at me and said, very quietly, "We raised you. We gave you everything. And you can't do this one thing." My father said, "If you walk out of here without signing that, you can keep walking." Would you like to know what my brother said then? He said nothing. He looked down at his plate. Because Derek has always known how to make himself invisible when the work of pressuring me was being handled by someone else. I stood up. I folded the paper in half. I put it in my purse. I said, "I'll need to have this reviewed by my own attorney before I consider anything." Then I said happy birthday to my father, thanked my mother for dinner, hugged Bethany, and walked out. My father followed me to the driveway. He stood between me and my car. He said, "You're not leaving until we resolve this." I looked at him. I said, "Dad, please move." He said, "This is still my house and you'll show some respect." I took out my phone. I said, "If you don't move in the next 30 seconds, I'm going to call the police and tell them I'm being prevented from leaving a private residence against my will." My voice was calm. My hands were steady. I had never spoken to my father that way in my life. He moved. I got in my car and I drove home and I sat in my parking garage for 20 minutes before I trusted myself to go upstairs. Now, before I tell you everything that happened in the weeks after that, I need to tell you something I hadn't told anyone yet. Something I had started doing 3 months earlier, when the phone calls from my mother started feeling less like check-ins and more like negotiations. I had been recording them. Not every call, but the ones where money came up, where Derek came up, where I felt the familiar shape of something being asked of me in a way that wasn't quite asking. I used a call recording app on my phone. Completely legal in Texas, which is a one-party consent state. I had 11 recordings. The most important one was a voicemail my mother had left me in January, where she said, and I want to be careful how I describe this, so I'll just say she made it clear that if I didn't help Derek, Certain things about how our family had handled some financial matters over the years would become my problem. I don't want to go into detail about what those matters were. What I will tell you is that when I played that voicemail for an attorney the following Monday morning, she looked at me over her glasses and said, "This is coercive." I already knew that, I just needed someone with a law degree to say it out loud. Over the next 3 weeks, I did several things. I sent a formal letter through my attorney to my parents' address, citing the voicemail, requesting that all future contact regarding financial matters be conducted in writing. I changed my personal cell number and gave the new one only to 3 people: my best friend Dominique, my manager, and Bethany, who had texted me the morning after the dinner to say she was sorry and that what happened was not okay. I did not respond to Derek's Instagram DMs. I did not respond to Simone's text message that said he really does love you and needs you right now. I did not respond to my Aunt Sandra's email with the subject line, "Family Healing." What I did do was forward the loan agreement to my attorney, who noted 3 provisions in it that were not standard and would have given Derek the right to extend repayment indefinitely under certain conditions. I also ran the numbers on the restaurant build-out that Derek had described to my parents and confirmed, through about 2 hours of research, that his cost estimates were off by roughly 30%. A build-out, like what he was describing in that neighborhood, at current contractor rates, was going to cost closer to $60,000, not $45,000. Derek didn't have a funding gap. He had a business plan built on a number he'd invented. I did not share this information with my parents. I kept it to myself, the way I had been taught to keep things to myself my whole life, except this time I was the one who decided what to do with it. 6 weeks after the birthday dinner, Derek signed a lease on the Ember and Oak space. I know this because Bethany texted me. She said the family was acting like it was a done deal, that Derek must have found another investor, that everyone was excited. I texted back a thumbs up and went back to work. 8 weeks after the birthday dinner, the contractor Derek had hired walked off the job. Bethany told me this too. Apparently the check Derek had written for the first payment had bounced. The contractor who had already demoed the existing interior left the space stripped to its studs and filed a lien. 10 weeks after the birthday dinner, Derek lost the lease. The landlord had a clause about construction timelines. Derek had missed the first milestone by 3 weeks. The landlord kept the security deposit, which was $6,000 that my parents had given him. My father called my new number. I don't know how he got it. Probably Bethany, who I've since forgiven because she felt terrible and left a voicemail. He was crying. He said Derek was devastated. He said the family needed to come together. He said he knew things had gotten out of hand at the dinner and he was sorry for the way it went. He said, "We just love you both so much, and we didn't handle it right." It was the first time my father had ever apologized to me for anything. I listened to that voicemail 4 times. Then I called my attorney and asked her what my options were regarding the coercive voicemail, because I had decided I wasn't going to let that sit unaddressed any longer, apology or not. What happened after that is still in process. I can't share details. What I can tell you is that my mother now knows that recording exists. And the conversation we had after she found out, the first real conversation we've had in my adult life, is the reason I'm still deciding whether there is a version of this family I want to be part of. I'm not there yet. What I know is this. I spent 31 years being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need anything because she was too busy being useful. I built a life that worked, and I built it quietly, and I think somewhere along the way my family looked at that quiet and decided it was permission. Decided that because I hadn't collapsed, I must have room for their weight. I did not have room, I just never said so. The night I drove home from my father's birthday dinner, I sat in that parking garage, and I thought about every moment I had said yes when I meant no. Every time I had wired money, or covered something, or said I'll figure it out, or stayed on the phone an extra 30 minutes talking someone through a crisis they had created themselves. I thought about what I had traded for the feeling of being needed by people who were supposed to love me regardless. I thought about Ember and Oak, the logo on Fiverr, the mood board, my brother's settled smile from across the table. I thought about my father's voice, saying, "Good girl." There is a version of forgiveness that is about release. About deciding that carrying something costs you more than setting it down. I believe in that kind of forgiveness. I'm working toward it. There is another kind of forgiveness that people use as a synonym for returning to the scene. Going back, resuming the position, pretending that what happened is now behind everyone, and the future can be different without anyone actually changing. That kind is not forgiveness. That is convenience dressed up in gentle language, and I am done being convenient. I have a therapist now. I started seeing her the week after the dinner. She asked me in our third session what I wanted my life to look like in 5 years. Not my career, not my finances, my life. And I sat there for a long moment, because the honest answer was that I had never let myself think about it in those terms. I had always thought about my life in terms of what I was managing, what I was preventing, what I was making possible for other people. She said, "What if you got to just want things for yourself?" I didn't have an answer. I'm still working on one. What I can tell you is that I've started. The savings account is still growing. The apartment is still mine. The car is still mine. My number is new. And the people who have it are people who have shown me they can be trusted with access to me. My brother has not reached out through any channel since the lease fell through. I don't know what that means. Maybe he's ashamed. Maybe he's already moving on to the next idea, the next pitch, the next table where someone will slide a document towards someone else and call it love. My mother sent a card, handwritten. She said she was sorry. She said she had been carrying something for a long time, and she handled it badly, and she wanted a chance to talk, if I was willing. The card is on my kitchen counter. I've read it several times. I haven't responded yet. I'm not ready. That's new for me, admitting I'm not ready, instead of pretending I am so someone else can feel better. $45,000. That's what this cost my family. Not in money, they never got the money. That's what it cost them in the currency that actually matters. In trust. In access. In the version of me that would have kept absorbing, kept being quiet, kept being the responsible one who didn't need anything. She's gone. I don't know what comes next, but I know she's gone. If you were in a situation like this, if someone in your family ever made you feel like your success was something they were entitled to, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments. Tell me what you did, or what you wish you'd done, or what you're still trying to figure out. And if this is the first video of mine you've seen, tap the subscribe button. I'm Rachel, this is Revenge Harvest, and we're just getting started.